So the Dark Side of the Ring Road Warriors episode came out, and in preparation, I did some extra research, which I always do. And one of the things that I did is I watched the WWE documentary as well. So where there might be missing pieces, I'm going to fit the WWE documentary or other things into this video. A word of caution, however, for you and me, is that there are parts of the WWE documentary that sound and feel like kayfabe to me. Like it wasn't as raw as interviews are today. You know, it was kind of a lot of demons talk and a lot of talking around things. And there was things that were mentioned in the Dark Side of the Ring that wasn't mentioned in the Road Warriors DVD. Even though Hawk was dead when the DVD came out, they still didn't get as gritty. And there was also one one subject that I was absolutely obsessed with that was not touched on in either documentary, which was surprised to me that it wasn't brought up in the Dark Side of the Ring because I know how much they love talking about people getting embarrassed. But it was Rocco, you know, the fucking ventriloquist dummy that Paul Ellering used to carry to the ring. At some point, I'm going to slide that into this video. And, you know, um, sorry for breaking kayfabe, but I've already recorded that audio. I have no idea where I'm going to put it. I'm going to have to try to find a natural segue into it so I won't seem like I'm editing this shit to death. But we're going to go through these. I want to go through the documentary, The Dark Side of the Ring, and I'm going to fill it in with. I'm not going to go through it in grainy detail, obviously. I'm just going to pick a couple of things that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to kind of support it with other information that I can find. So we find out that, of course, like I said, first they talked about tag team wrestling. We're going to get into that later, the concept of tag team wrestling and it's how it's important and it's creative and all that type of stuff. But the early part of the episode is about Joe and Mike. You know, Joe Animal, Mike Hawk as guys. You know, they meet in school in 1977 in Minneapolis in Jesse Ventura's gym, and Mike is going to be the school bully. You know, we get to see Hawk's brothers, which is really cool. And they talk about Grandma B's. Now, Grandma B's is the club that they used to bounce at. They were bouncers at various different strip clubs and bars and things like that in their early days. And in the Dark Side of the Ring, they don't really talk that much. They go into more detail as far as what they were doing. As far as, you know, in the WWE produced documentary, Animal did not mention that there were people who were dealing drugs within the bar and they were leg breakers for those people. You know, essentially what, you know, Rocky was for I forget what the guy's name in the Rocky movies. Rocky would go and collect the money. He was the collector. Essentially, Animal says this is what they used to do in Grandma B's. But as far as in the WWE produced documentary, they just talked about all the different guys who ended up being wrestlers who were also bouncers at Grandma B's, like Barry Darsow, John Nord, who ended up being a berserker, and Rick Rude, and they were all bouncers. And but in the Dark Side of the Ring, they talked about it. You know, that's where they met Eddie Sharkey, who ended up training them. In the WWE documentary, it says that Eddie Sharkey was a bartender at Grandma B's. But in the WWE documentary, it says that Eddie Sharkey didn't really smarten them up, so they were going in there really punching each other for real, which kind of sounds consistent with a lot of old wrestlers. And Eddie Sharkey is like an old guy, like really old. So that was interesting. I found that to be pretty interesting because I'm always interested in bouncers and leg breakers because I'm always interested in like true crime stuff. And they talked a lot about the tripwire when they used to throw guys. And that's a story that's in both documentaries, so it's probably true. And it's told also about Barry Darsow, about them throwing guys to see how far they can roll. And it's like, dude, these dudes are like badasses. They're like really tough guys. So, of course, you know, they meet Ole Anderson, who comes into Grandma B's, and he recruits Animal. Animal, you know, is the original Road Warrior who, you know, he didn't really get over. It wasn't really working out. Hawk was working in Canada. Hawk, you know, wasn't working out by himself. They bring Hawk down to Georgia. They put them together, and now you got the Road Warriors as a tag team. And then you can start seeing the pieces get put together. You know, Paul Ellering, the precious Paul Ellering. They didn't go into him being a wrestler in the Dark Side of the Ring, But Precious Paul Ellering was a wrestler. He had like a career-ending knee injury, and so then he transitioned to being a manager, and he ended up being a manager for the Road Warriors. They didn't talk about that at all in the Dark Side of the Ring, which was I found strange. But Paul Ellering did a lot of their actual managing. Like he was a real manager. Like he did their books, he booked their tickets, he did all of the small things like travel and hotels and taking them to different promotions and stuff like that. He also helped them financially with investments and stuff like that. So that's stuff that I think that should have been more talked about because he really had these guys back. Okay, so the face paint, I think in the Dark Side of the Ring they said it was Ole Anderson's idea. In the WWE documentary, it was a confusion of whether it was Ole Anderson or Bill Watts, but it was one of the two. The haircuts, were Hawk's idea. The spikes were Animal's idea, and he said he had a friend that made them. They had a style that was working very stiff, obviously, which became like the Road Warrior style. Okay, but they didn't talk about this in the Dark Side of the Ring, but the original Legion of Doom. So the original Legion of Doom was the Spoiler, Jake Roberts, King Kong Bundy, and the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering. And over the years, these various other people that was in the Legion of Doom kind of petered off and left, and they just kind of became those two guys. And they kind of carried that name to the WWF, where they already had an Ultimate Warrior and Kerry Von Erich, who was wrestling in WCCW, World Class Championship Wrestling, as the Modern Day Warrior. Even though they changed his name too, which is, that's Vince McMahon being Vince McMahon. You got too many goddamn warriors, right? So he changed two of them, But I didn't mind the Legion of Doom name. I know a lot of people really get tight-assed about what you call them. I don't see why it matters. I mean, at the end of the day, we know who you're talking about. It's like, are you mad that somebody's called Macho Man Randy Savage or Randy Macho Man Savage? Or if you're Bret the Hitman Hart or the Hitman Bret Hart, it's like, who the fuck cares, really? It's the same shit. Okay, so the important thing is, they talked about the one of the interesting things that was brought up is their jaunt through Georgia Championship Wrestling and Crockett, basically main event in Starrcade 80. Ooh, was it? Ooh, I'm pretty sure it's not Starrcade 83. Fuck, I don't remember what year that was. But anyway, they main event in Starrcade with the Midnight Express in the scaffold match, and they actually went to wrestle in Japan before the big WrestleMania level match that they were about to have. They went to wrestle in Japan, and Hawk got injured. Now, a lot of people want to say like, okay, well, why does WWE not let people work other promotions? And this is why. You had the fucking main event of your major show, your biggest show of the fucking year, and one of the four fucking guys gets hurt. That's absolutely crazy. But apparently Hawk broke his leg or somehow, and that he was self-medicating. Now, in the WWE documentary, it is not mentioned at all that, Hawk might have been inebriated during this match, during the scaffold match. Now, apparently because it went so well, nobody really paid it no attention. And but apparently he might have been fucked up even during that match. I think Animal said that he was on muscle relaxers. So in the WWE documentary, they went through all of the different territories that they went through, AWA, NWA, the different feuds that they were involved in, like the Fabulous Ones and the Super Clash feud with the Freebirds, which I think that was pretty fun. I actually watched that match, so I thought that was pretty fun. But in the WWF, they talked about, because this is what everybody cares about, really, is the WWF stuff. The WWF changed their name for obvious reasons, like reason I just explained. They already had an Ultimate Warrior, and they were still dealing with the Modern Day Warrior, Kerry Von Erich, which they changed his name to the Texas Tornado. But they talked about in the Dark Side of the Ring how difficult the grind was. Basically, the amount of time that you're working in the WWF was kicking their ass, and Hawk was basically doing a lot of drugs in order to cope with being a workhorse in the WWF, and that Hawk would get suspended. This was not mentioned in the WWE documentary at all, that Hawk would be getting suspended, and they would be off for 3 months. But they talked about the match, and of course, in the WWE documentary, they talked about their different feuds, which I'm surprised they didn't bring up in the Dark Side of the Ring. Is the Demolition stuff. And, of course, there was the big Art of Demolition ripoffs. I don't know, man. Like, ultimately, was the gimmick that close that they could be considered ripoffs? Yes, but I think the execution of the characters were completely different. And the WWE documentary, they kind of told the story with Barry Darso, who doesn't believe that they were ripoffs, said that that they were actual wrestlers, and Joe Animal kind of agreed and said, like, we were two street kids. They didn't really know what we were doing. We were just going out there throwing punches and kicks and slamming people. While these were just two wrestlers trying to be what we were doing. And I was like, okay, whatever. As a kid, I didn't really see it that way. I didn't really look and say, oh, these four guys all look the same. I kind of was able to tell them apart, but whatever. So it wasn't mentioned, but it was pretty obvious to anybody who ever watched the match that Hawk was fucked up during the Money Inc. match in SummerSlam 1992, which is really bizarre, okay? Because on Dark Side of the Ring, he talked about, Hawk for not being, he could not perform. He could not perform the Doomsday Device. So they switched the finish, and he said they actually, when they were fucked up, he was so fucked up that they changed the booking. That they were supposed to wrestle the Natural Disasters, and then they ended up wrestling Money Inc. But I'm not sure if that makes sense, but whatever. Money Inc. is a good team. Shit, I like Ted DiBiase. But it was strange that they won that match with a power slam. So I'm going to say that Animal was probably, and then there you could see Hawk in the power slam spot that he didn't know what was going on. He was just kind of bumping into the ref and shit. Like, he was clearly fucked up. And Animal in the Dark Side of the Ring talked about this, that, in the weeks coming up to the SummerSlam match, Hawk would just be like off on Placidils and just giving Vince the business, just talking, which is a hallucinogen, by the way. So he's just going off and all this bullshit, and it drove Vince up the fucking wall. So he took them out of, I guess, a higher level match and gave them Money Inc. And that was really bizarre. Like, that was really bizarre. But also in the WWE documentary, he talks about Hawk parking too close to him on the motorcycle, because they came in on the motorcycles in Wembley Stadium, and he said Hawk parked very close to him, and it burned Animal's leg. That the muffler burned his leg and basically welded his tights to his shin or something like that. And I was surprised he didn't bring that up in the Dark Side of the Ring. That sound like that shit sound like it hurts. Like, it sound like it hurt like a motherfucker. But okay, in the WWE documentary, it says that Hawk refused to go to rehab. That he was offered rehab after the '92 SummerSlam. He said, I'm not doing it. And then Animal and Ellering went to, I think, Philadelphia or somewhere, and Hawk quit while they were waiting on him. And this is a story told in both of them, that in both documentaries, that essentially Hawk just up and quit on his own because he was frustrated about being suspended and being asked to take drug tests and being told to go to rehab, and he just basically said, fuck it, I'm out, which is perfectly his right to do. But at the same time, he got a partner to think about, and he just said, fuck Animal, I quit. Now, if somebody in their right mind, like, this is where we get the idea, and I'm going to say this later. Again, I've already recorded it. It's hard for tag teams, because what is Animal's value by himself? If Hawk just says up and says, fuck it, I quit, what can Animal really do? So what Animal says he did, and he said this in both documentaries, is that he continued working the Legion of Doom dates he just worked by himself. And in one of those matches, he got injured in a 2-on-1 match against the Beverly Brothers. Vince is a fucking asshole for making not for making the guy work, because the guy got to work to get paid, but for putting him in handicap matches. Like, Vince, come the fuck on. You could have put him in a 1-on-1 match. I mean, let's be real here, dog. But he ended up getting hurt in the match. Meanwhile, Hawk is over in Japan with fucking Kensuke Sasaki, the Power Warrior, doing the fucking Legion of Doom. So, which is fucking hilarious. I'm sure that, the Alvarezes of the world think this is the best version of the Legion of Doom with the fucking Power Warrior and Hawk. But he goes and he said, Animal says that he wasn't really all that upset about it. Other than, well, in the WWE documentary, he says that he was more upset that Hawk, one, didn't ask, and two, he felt like he was harming Animal because Animal can't get bookings by himself. He needs Hawk in order, because again, it's like what I just said, what is his value by himself? When you've been in a tag team for so long, and that's the tag team has so much value, what is the value of just you? So that was very difficult. And the Kensuke Sasaki shit is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it is as ridiculous as the Heidenreich stuff, which I'm not going to get into. I was thinking about it. Like, I was thinking about maybe I should go and see why Heidenreich is with them. And then I think, like, really, do anybody give a fuck? Everybody can just say it was stupid as shit and nobody gives a fuck about Heidenreich. And let's all pretend it didn't happen. Can we agree to that? Can we just agree that the Heidenreich shit didn't happen? Because I don't want to torture myself going through it. So fuck this Heidenreich shit, okay? Fuck it. All right. So I'm just not going to go through it. So they also talked about the 1997 stuff. They get back together after Hawk is done fucking around in Japan. And then they get back together in 1997, and this is where they come in. Well, they talked about, let's back up for a minute. So before the 1997 return, Hawk gets hepatitis C and has an OD, and that shit was scary. That shit sounded like scary as fuck. I don't know, like, bro, that sounded fucked up, fam. But anyway, so they come back in 1997. Draws is introduced as a contingency plan, but they didn't mention in Dark Side of the Ring that Sonny was with them, and I wanted to find out why Sonny was there. I have thoughts. I've read interviews about Animals talking about Sonny being fucked up along with Hawk, during this 1997 run, that she was on pills as well. It's like everybody's on pills, so why not Sonny too? But I couldn't figure out why she was there. And I think it's partly just because, just to jazz the group up, because they had been around for so long. And I think that's just one of the things that when you're a long-standing act, people start to do things just to try to freshen you up. And I think that's why Sonny was there. That's also probably why they had those helmets. And I like the helmets. I think the helmets was dope. In the WWE documentary, we find out that Hawk didn't like the helmets, and he dumped the helmet. He threw it into the crowd or some shit, which I think is a pretty cool souvenir for whoever got it. But I like the helmets. Hawk didn't like the helmets. Me and Hawk have different tastes. But Draws is introduced as an insurance policy. And basically, if Hawk is fucked up, Draws is going to step in. Which, look, I guess if that is his business to do. But to me, you got Hawk and Animal. These are tough names. Then you got Puke. Like, come on, dude. Puke? Like, anybody, you can put face paint and fucking spikes on anybody, dude. But you got to do something with the name. The name fucking sucks. Draws would have been fine. Call the guy fucking Puke. That's fucking trash. Like, that's really bad stuff. It wasn't mentioned in the Dark Side of the Ring, but at the 1997 rebirth, the LOD 2000, Paul Ellering is brought in to feud with the LOD, with the Disciples of Apocalypse, which is a god-awful stable that was led by fucking Crush. As anybody gives a fuck about Crush. It doesn't, no matter what iteration, nobody gives a fuck about Bryan Adams. Okay? Nobody gives a fuck. It could be Crush. It could be DOA Crush. It could be Prison Crush, Kona Crush, fucking Chronic Crush. Nobody gives a fuck about Crush, okay? And, I think he's dead now. I shouldn't talk so brutally about the guy. I think he's dead now. But he's one of those plain big dudes who's just been around forever. And I have no fucking idea why he was given so much. But for some reason, they brought Paul Ellering in to feud with the Legion of Doom. It didn't really work out. But then they go into the obvious embarrassment of Hawk pretending to be drunk. And basically what they do is they take your, individual personality traits or storylines that everybody knows is real, and they embellish them. And this is what they were doing. And Hawk said, and what Animal said, because Hawk wasn't there to talk, but Animal said that, Hawk was still trying to make amends for being fucked up in the '92 SummerSlam and all this type of stuff. So he just willingly went along with the storyline as a sort of apology for being fucked up during those days. But it really did make Hawk look like shit. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think people do hate when WWE does these kind of real life storylines that are really close to home. People do get real agitated about those, and I understand why, even though I kind of enjoy them, because I think that one of the issues, and this is kind of a sneak peek into the Rocco segment, is that Vince McMahon had a problem with the Legion of Doom not being able to get sympathy. Because they were such hard-nosed, physical performers, it was very difficult for them to get sympathy. They were such big and brutal guys that, they didn't sell a lot. So they had to do certain things, to try to gimmick them up to make them vulnerable. And playing up Hawk's illness, because alcoholism is an illness, was a way of getting them sympathy. It wasn't a way of humiliating Hawk. It was a way of trying to get the crowd behind them, kind of in a way to turn them into bigger baby faces, as guys who can overcome, instead of being big superhero. Well, I'll have to go into the aspirational superhero and the cathartic motivational superhero, which is actually something I picked up from the Professional Geek channel. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can go over there, because I don't know it that well, but I know the aspirational hero is basically the comic book characters like Superman, Captain America, the guys who are always doing the right thing and they never change, and stuff like that. And cathartic motivational are heroes that are flawed in some way or feel like they have to redeem themselves somehow. So you will have, I think, a cathartic motivational hero would be like Xena Warrior Princess. That's what it just popped into my head. But the story of Xena Warrior Princess is that she, after her village was destroyed, she went on a murder spree, killed all these people. And when we see her in the story, she's trying to redeem herself. She's trying to prevent herself from killing now. She's trying to be a different person. So that's a cathartic motivational hero. And that's what Hawk was trying to do here, was he had to go down to the dregs in order to build himself back up. But it was so personal and so, so touchy that it made everybody uncomfortable. And I can understand it, And the WWE documentary is called, quote unquote, The Demons, because that's what they call everything. Demons just means everything. It means drugs, it means alcohol, it means everything. But, and they did the, the Titantron thing where Droz pushes Hawk off the Titantron. Now, as a kid, when I was 14 when this happened, so I was like, holy shit. It was a cool mystery. Did Droz push him, or was he trying to pull him and Hawk fell? Of course, being an adult, you can see he clearly fucking pushed him. But when I was a kid, I barely paying attention to this shit, I was like, oh, I can't believe it, And I didn't really enjoy it, because I was a big fan of the Road Warriors, and I thought Hawk looked like a fucking fool. But, this kind of gets them out of there. They kind of go off on this. I forget how the run ended, as a matter of fact. I don't remember how that run ended. But they ended up leaving. And in the Dark Side of the Ring, they kind of go more into detail about what they did after they left the WWF in 1997. So apparently they went to Australia. So they go to Australia, and Hawk starts pounding cocaine and muscle relaxers. He's up for 2 days. And then he starts getting cardiomyopathy. He gets diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, with his heart ailment. And, he ODs, of course. And he nearly died. So now he's got a heart condition. So, now, not in the Dark Side of the Ring, is that they actually went back to WWE in 2003. So what happens is they get a call, they go to WWE, they wrestle Kane and Rob Van Dam on Raw. They do the job for him. And Vince, basically Hawk did this as an apology for, of course, being fucked up. I guess he was fucked up in '97 too. So apparently Vince still kind of didn't really forgive him for being fucked up all those years. So he kind of wanted to. He came in to do a job to try to. He wanted one last run. One last run, but Vince just jobbed him out to Kane and RVD. There was an interview out there where Animal says that we should have won the belts. So like obviously you would say that, right? But no way. There's no. I mean, look, I don't really like the Kane RVD tag team. It would have been cool to have the Road Warriors win again. Would have been dope. Would have been a better send off than fucking Animal and Heidenreich. Oh, I forgot. We agreed that shit didn't happen. So apparently after they go through all of this stuff. The Dark Side of the Ring documentary talks about Animal finding this group called the Christian Power Team, which I had never heard of, but they look like some sort of American gladiators. Like the shit looks super corny. Look, if you're a Christian, I'm so sorry, but a lot of Christian gospel shit is like super fucking corny. I'm sorry, it just is. Like gospel rap is some of the corniest shit in the world. But it saved Hawk's life. Well, it saved the Hawk's life. It prolonged his life, let's say. So Hawk finds God at this Christian retreat that they go to, and he gets married, and everything's going smooth. He gets baptized and all this good stuff, and then while he's moving furniture with his wife, he ends up having a heart attack. And so now we're going to go into a story written in the Star Tribune about Road Warrior Hawk having a goddamn heart attack. Okay, so I'll send you on the other side of this. Okay, so this article is about Road Warrior Hawk's death. This was before they figured out that he had a heart attack, so there's going to be some things in it that might not be completely accurate as of today. It was written in 2003 by Richard Merrihew for the Star Tribune. So here we go. For nearly a decade, Mike Headstrand was part of the hottest act in all of professional wrestling. With his biker boots, spiked shoulder pads, face paint, and sculpted physique, the Minneapolis bodybuilder teamed with friend and fellow weightlifter Joe Laurinaitis to make up the Road Warriors, pro wrestling's dominant tag team of the 1980s. I would say that at their peak, they were the most popular tag team in history of wrestling, said Dave Meltzer, editor and publisher of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. They had a certain look and ferocity that really appealed to people. Hegstrand, a Minneapolis native who wrestled under the nickname Road Warrior Hawk, died in his sleep early Sunday at his home near Clearwater, Florida. He was 46. The cause of death was not known. However, the 6'3", 280-pound wrestler had suffered from a heart ailment in recent years and had other health problems, friends said. Hegstrand is the fourth wrestler from this era to die since 1998. It was such a shock, said Jim Younger, part owner of a gym in Plymouth, where Hegstrand and Laurinaitis, who wrestled under the name Road Warrior Animal, often trained. The two helped Younger finance the business. Younger said he heard from friends Monday that Hegstrand and his wife were moving from their home over the weekend, where Hegstrand said he wasn't feeling well. He went to bed and told his wife to wake him in a few hours. When she tried to wake him, she couldn't, Younger said. Younger said Hegstrand is the fourth wrestler from Minneapolis to die in recent years. In 1998, Dean Peters, who graduated from Robbinsdale High School in 1976 and wrestled under the name Brady Boone, died in a car accident while driving to his home in Tampa. A year later, Peters' high school classmate and fellow pro wrestler Rick Rude died of heart failure at 40. Earlier this year, Kurt Hennig, another Robbinsdale classmate, was found dead in a hotel room in Tampa. Investigators said Hennig, 44, died of a cocaine overdose. Younger said Hegstrand, who attended Minneapolis North, and Laurinaitis, who attended Irondale High School in New Brighton, lifted weights with the others at his gym. They were all good friends, Younger said. They were all guys who grew up with. I told a couple of friends today, it was like, God, who's next in our group? Came out of nowhere. Younger said he got to know Hegstrand and Laurinaitis in 1980 when they began lifting weights and training in a gym he ran in Golden Valley. At the time, the two were bouncers at a Minneapolis bar. They got into wrestling after being approached by trainer Eddie Sharkey. They later went out on their own, but they didn't do very good and came home, Younger said. Later, they were approached with a tag team idea. Soon, the painted mugs of Hawk and Animal were on millions of TV screens across America. They came out of nowhere, said Vern Gagne, who promoted them for a time when they were part of Gagne's American Wrestling Association. They weren't polished wrestlers. They pounded on guys more than they did any scientific wrestling. Sounds like Vern Gagne. But notoriety had its price. It was more like a rock and roll star lifestyle they lived, Younger said. And Hawk lived it to the max. He had 20 years of hard living, but in the last 3 or 4 years, he really settled down. Several years ago, Hegstrand became ill while wrestling in Australia. According to a 2001 article in the Orlando Sentinel, Hegstrand was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy, a form of heart disease that attacks the muscle fibers. I was no saint, Hegstrand told the Sentinel. For years, I put a lot of stuff in my body that I shouldn't have. Now it's just the God-made stuff. I'm eating healthy and feeling stronger. He resumed wrestling, although not as seriously as before. Earlier this summer, the Road Warriors were reunited with their former manager at a show in Chicago to celebrate their years together. These guys who had really been such huge stars really weren't anymore, Meltzer said. People wanted them to be, but they weren't. Physically, they couldn't do it anymore. One of the reasons for their decline in recent years is that he just couldn't do anything because he'd been so sick. He paid the price. That is a really fucked up way to end an article, okay? I'm sorry, you end an article on an up, not a down. That's fucking bullshit. And I'm not surprised at all that it came from Meltzer. But I'm also not surprised that, of the heart attacks. Because you have these guys, all of whom were known for doing cocaine and hanging together. So, I mean, are you surprised that they all had heart attacks? Not at all. But this is the little piece that I want to talk about in terms of Road Warrior Hawk's death. So let's get back into the video. So one of the things that was not mentioned in either documentary that I really kind of wanted to talk about, because I thought it was so goddamn stupid, and usually there's something that that you kind of see it and you kind of think like that's so out of place, was that Paul Ellering used to ride to the like he's riding the motorcycle at SummerSlam '92. He had the fucking mannequin, the dummy with him, the ventriloquist dummy. And I forgot all about that shit, if we being honest. Like, I've completely forgotten all about it. And it was not mentioned. And I'm surprised they didn't mention it in the Dark Side of the Ring, because they like bring it up, when people get made to look silly. And this kind of made Paul Ellering look fucking silly. But I wanted to know what the reasoning behind it was. So I went and found an article. It was on PW Insider. So we're going to go through this. It's a short piece explaining what Paul Ellering is going to explain, why they had Rocco, and why he feels the WWE didn't go further with the LOD. So let's see. One of the topics that James Gutman had always wondered about was the WWF's introduction of Rocco, the ventriloquist dummy, to the Legion of Doom. When Animal appeared on clubwwi.com, he didn't speak highly of the angle, what many thought was done to discredit the roadies. Paul's thoughts on it are, it was just a point to the office at the time that the guys just can't get no sympathy. It was just something thrown in there to give them a perk, maybe work something around it, but nothing ever came of it. JG brought up all the rumors at the time about angles involving the dummy, but nothing happened. Ellering said that they could have done a lot with it, but didn't do anything. So the idea was they was going to bring the dummy in to do storyline purposes. Maybe one day somebody was going to destroy it or something. That's usually what you do. I think it's called Chekhov's gun, but it's a writing style where if you introduce something, you have to use it later. So if it's like if you introduce a sword into a scene, somebody has to use it. So eventually, when they bring in something like a dummy or something like that, the point is people are going to destroy it, or it's going to be used as a weapon or something like that. Like Jim Cornette's tennis racket, or Paul Heyman's cell phone, gimmicks. So bringing in this gimmick, the general idea was they're going to use it in some way. Likely somebody's going to destroy it to get over some other tag team. And it was supposed to give them sympathy. because they are two big guys. It is hard for two big guys to get sympathy. It's just difficult, especially when most of their opponents are going to end up being smaller than they are. But Ellering also wanted to talk about why they didn't seem to go further in the company. Even though they won the tag team titles, he felt like they should have done more with the Road Warriors or the LOD. So here's what he said. The WWE never let them run, Actually go with what we got them there. I think they just got there because of the business. By the time in the 1980s, the single wrestler was so strong, more than a tag team. The singles wrestler was so much more compelling, storylines much bigger. By then, the 1990s, the guys had slowed down already, and people had seen them so many times that the luster had worn off. You feel like we got it. Why don't they let us do it? They see it differently. This is a lot of weirdness here. They got it now, but they won't have it next year. We better go with these guys because we know where they're going to be. That's real strange talking right there. That's very little information. But I think that what he was trying to convey is that the Road Warriors are just older. And it wasn't mentioned here, but they talked about it in the documentary that Hawk was also on drugs during a lot of their WWF run, especially the early run, where they showed actual footage of Hawk being lost in the ring. And it was something crazy about that SummerSlam, wasn't it? Because Bulldog was fucked up in his match too. So you had two of the top guys in the company, both were fucked up on cocaine or something else. Bulldog, I'm pretty sure, was on cocaine. I think Brett said he did it the day before. And Hawk was clearly fucked up in the match against Money Inc. So, but he says that, the guys have pretty much run their course and people have seen their act a bunch. So they were trying to do different things to make them interesting and all that type of stuff, which I can understand. I can understand that. So I just kind of wanted to talk about this. So let's go back into the other parts of the video. So the early part of the Dark Side of the Ring segment was a love letter to tag team wrestling, about the 4-person dance and how wonderful tag team wrestling is. And I'm not saying I disagree. I actually think tag team wrestling, when it's done very well, is some of the best wrestling in the world. But to be quite honest, when you look at tag team wrestling, you're looking at managing a lot of different personalities and a lot of different egos. But mostly the problem is if something happens to one, the other is pretty much fucked. We see it currently with the Usos. One of them gets a DUI. The team's off. Both of them are out of a job for months. Neither one of them works for months because one of them decided to get a DUI. And currently also with the Usos, one of them is injured. So, the other one can't work because one of them is injured. AOP, same thing. One of them is injured, so he can't work. I think one of the fucking Young Bucks decided to go get hair plugs or some stupid shit like that. And so the Young Bucks have been off TV for a long time. But that's the nature of tag team wrestling. If one guy gets hurt, the other one has no fucking value. And so now you're paying, the cost of two guys, but, they're only valuable together. So I think that's part of the reason why you don't see a lot of tag team wrestling anymore. But I want to talk to, I looked up Animal, did a little speak, he did a Q&A in 2011 about tag team wrestling or something like that. And he says that, tag team wrestling is like a marriage. So I kind of want to read this. So the question goes, you go into detail about the ups and downs you had with Hawk over the years and his battle with substance abuse. Is being in a tag team a lot like being in a marriage in that you're together for better or worse? Animal responds, well, that's why the wrestling business probably doesn't have too many tag teams today. And when they do have them, they don't have them long. I don't think they want to put any stock in the teams anymore because there's always one member of the team that, for whatever reason, just falls apart. With the British Bulldogs, it was Dynamite Kid, absolutely. With us, it was Hawk. With the and this is me taking let's pause this, and I'm going to take the step off. With the Rockers, it was Marty Jannetty. With the Hart Foundation, it was Jim the Anvil Neidhart. It's always one of the guys that is just incorrigible. It's always just that one guy who just people cannot stand. It's almost always that one fucking guy. Okay, back to the article. With almost every team, there's somebody or something where there's drinking or somebody goes crazy, especially with the top teams. I don't know why. Maybe it's because you work a little bit more and you're a little bit more in demand and you definitely take a pounding different when you're a top guy to make the match what you need to make it. It's probably why tag teams are not in the main event like they used to be. And you know what? I agree with that. I think that tag teams are, they're a risk. It's easier to put two singles guys together. They can have good tag team matches, but we've seen it even with the Hardy Boys, and these are two guys who are very creative. The WWE just did not give a fuck about Matt Hardy without Jeff. It's unfortunate. Jeff gets injured, Jeff gets fucked up, and Matt just sits at home and sits at home and sits at home, and it's unfair in a way, but when the bulk of your value is in the tag team, you kind of don't want to fuck with it. You saw it with the Dudley Boys and stuff like that too. And people try. Sometimes it works out when one guy leaves, and is able to go solo for a while. It works. Other times it turns into just a clusterfuck. Just I don't know how better way to put it. It's just a cluster. But this is, a lot of people talk a lot about loving tag teams, but they don't think about this. What are you going to do if one guy gets injured? And if a guy has a drug problem, like which happens with the Road Warriors, you have a guy with a severe drug problem for years, to the point where they had to put it in his contract, or they had to bring in third parties, with draws or something like that to make sure they can make dates. And, that's some serious shit. And this is the top tag team pretty much of all time. There are some people who may say, okay, what about the Midnight Express, or what about the Rock and Roll Express, or the Dudley Boys or something like that. But pretty much the Road Warriors are one of the most essential tag teams of all time, and they had a major problem with reliability due to only one member of the team just being unreliable. And that's a real concern in tag team wrestling. So let's go back to the end of the video, and let's get back to it. All right, so I like to go out on a high note. Well, I'm gonna try to go out on a high note. So I saved this story for the last piece that I'm gonna go through. This is the story of the Road Warriors giving Vince McMahon the Doomsday Device in a strip club. Now, this story was told in Dark Side of the Ring by Charles Wright, who was the Godfather. But I have an article right here of Animal talking about it. It's from Fightful. So, in what may be a new industry standard for the anecdote best epitomizing professional wrestling's party days of the 1980s and 1990s, the Road Warriors delivered their finisher to Vince McMahon in a strip club. Animal told the story during a recent interview in Sports Illustrated's Extra Mustard feature, recalling what happened in Texas. Where else? According to Animal, he, fellow Road Warrior Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Jim the Neidhart, the Warlord, and Vince McMahon were among a large group unwinding in the club. Hogan waved at me when Vince wasn't looking and gave me the thumbs up, Animal said. I looked at Hawk and said, bro, let's give Vince a doomsday. So I got behind Vince and got him up on my shoulders, and Hawk literally jumped on the stage at a male dance place with female dancers, mind you. And the dancer moved aside because she probably was used to seeing a 275-pound man with straps coming out of his ears. Then Hawk came running off the stage and clotheslined Vince off my shoulders. This is great shit. Animal noted that Hogan caught McMahon rather than force the WWE chairman to take a full flip up on the floor. You can only imagine all of us doing this right in the middle of a dance club. But it was all done in fun. Shortly thereafter, we were all escorted out, Animal said, also describing it as a great time in the wrestling business. Oh, shit. A great time in the wrestling business. Yes, that's fantastic. So this is what I think about when I think of the Road Warriors, man. I think of, them two big bruisers, two big fun guys, man. And, they were badasses, but they also knew how to, cut a joke. And Hawk was fierce with the promos. I mean, he says such colorful things. Like, when he says, we snack on danger, we dine